You have a vision? Do you have a dream for your church or ministry? Do you see a picture of what could be done through your ministry? If you clearly see that vision or dream, but you're struggling with a directional plan, how do I take everything that I've got at my disposal? How do I create direction? How do I create targets? How do I put that plan into action? How do I get people involved? How do I get everyone in the ministry, everybody involved in our church, pulling in the same direction? If those are things that you're struggling with today, stay with us.
In today's world, success is measured in many ways. Regardless of your definition of success, you need one important ingredient to achieve that goal: a plan. In the next hour, Dr. Henry Migliore, an internationally recognized author, educator, organizational specialist, and motivational speaker, will take you step by step through a systematic philosophy entitled Strategic Long-Range Planning. This concept is designed to help you achieve your success by a goal-oriented planning system. In more than 30 years of experience, Dr. Migliore has been successful in applying this management philosophy in both large corporate environments and small business enterprises, universities, churches, ministries, as well as personal family life worldwide. Today's topic: strategic long-range planning for churches and ministries. And now, Dr. Henry Migliore.
Now, let's first of all think about the vision and dream. I think everything starts with your purpose statement. And I covered that early in the book. What's your purpose, your mission, your reason for being? Are you trying to be an international, national, regional, or local ministry? You've got to go through and determine what that vision and dream happens to be. Now, let me share with you, as we go through each of these steps, how you can put that plan together, and I'm going to use a number of examples. First of all, it takes time and effort. Don't think for 1 minute that you're going to be able to put together a strategic plan either overnight or over the weekend and have it a well-thought-out document in writing and have everybody behind it. It takes a lot of time. At Victory Christian here in Tulsa, it took almost a year of constant meetings, sometimes weekly, a minimum of every 2 weeks. It took that long to put the plan together. First Methodist of Tulsa, we've been working on that plan for 6 months. So it takes time, it takes a commitment. Now I want to take and show you a procedure that I think will help you. It's been successful in the past. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. One of the things you can do is take your pastors, take your executive team away on a retreat. A 2 or 3 day retreat away from town in a setting where people can become energized. They're not bothered by phone calls, the things that we get involved in day-to-day living. You need to have your team rested and able to think. That's what we did with Billy Joe Daugherty at Victory Christian. We went away on an initial 3-day retreat and went through each of the steps in the planning process. Now, another procedure, and this works fine also, is you can set up a series of meetings. Back at First Methodist, quite a number of years ago, under the direction of the late Dr. Thomas, we met for breakfast meetings for about 3 months in a row, getting together the plan. So let me take each step now, and let's talk about how you can do this. Okay, your purpose, your vision, your mission statement. How do you do that? All right, let's take a retreat setting. Here's what you might do. You've given an assignment to each of your associate pastors, everybody that's going to be in the meeting, to first of all have read the first 2 chapters in my book on strategic planning and management for churches and ministries. You'll want everybody familiar with the concept of strategic planning before the meeting starts. Okay, you ask each person then to write out on a sheet of paper the vision or dream or mission they see for the church. Now, let's say you've got a senior pastor and maybe 12 to 15 associate pastors, business managers, and members of the board in that initial meeting. Now, think about it. Each person now has brought one sheet of paper to that meeting. They've had a chance to prayerfully think through the vision they see, and that's important. They've thought about it themselves. Then after a bit of a discussion, your discussion leader can talk about and remind everybody what a purpose statement is supposed to be. Then you break the group up into 4 or 5 task forces. So if I've got, say, 16, I might say, let's break up in groups of 4 now and have a discussion on what's the purpose, vision, and reason for being for this church or ministry. Now, what's usually a good idea is I will rotate from table to table, and the senior pastor will move from table to table, and just let an open discussion and interchange take place among the people. Now, they're going to have to report, and they've got a scribe keeping notes. They're going to try to take their ideas, discuss them, and collectively agree on something they can present to the rest of the group. Okay, that's going to take about an hour, or if it's a breakfast meeting, you've worked your way through the entire breakfast meeting. Then you have each group report back. So each group, table 1, table 2, will stand up and say, okay, here's what we think our purpose and mission is. After each one is given its report, then the discussion leader, if I'm there leading the discussion, then we'll have an open interchange. Now, you'll never reach agreement in the first meeting or the first round, but it's important that you get a good interchange of ideas. Get everybody involved in thinking through what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Okay, now, once you've finished that step, then you gather up all those individual sheets. You gather up whatever notes the scribe took, and you put those in a little folder and you just set it aside. Now you go on into what I call the second step, which is environmental analysis. Now, in the environmental analysis stage, what you're trying to do now is look into what's going on both worldwide, nationally, regionally, and locally. What are statistics? You need information. Environmental analysis is like your daily planning. When each of us get up in the morning, I look outside. What's the weather going to be today? Part of my plan is dictated on how the weather is. If I hear a weather forecast that says potential rain, sleet, or blizzard, then I'm going to organize my day a little differently than a very nice day. And that's the same thing we have to do with our church or ministry. We've got to gather facts. We've got to know what's going on. We've got to know what's going on in America in terms of national statistics. What's the unemployment rate, say, in our particular town? Another thing that we've learned to do is do a congregational survey. That's a very important part of the environmental analysis process. We've developed a questionnaire, and a copy of the questionnaire is in the book, The Use of Strategic Planning in Churches and Ministries. We've got a computer program that will back that up and analyze it. And what you literally do is give the questionnaire to your congregation. We did that at Victory Christian. We did it at First United Methodist, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And what you're trying to do is gather a profile of information about the needs of the people in your own congregation. And this is what we're talking about in the area of environmental analysis. Okay, back to our retreat setting now. How do we gather this information? Okay, again, your discussion leader will talk about and give examples of environmental analysis. Each person will have read the chapter in the information on environmental analysis, and you'll go right back then and put them right back into their little subcommittees and say, okay, what do you think the 10 to 20 most important factors affecting this church might be? What statistics do you think are important to this church? Now, again, they'll spend another hour, or if you're using the method of a breakfast or luncheon meeting, then they've had a week to work on it. They've read the chapter. They've looked at the environmental conditions in that area, and they've come up with their own list. It's important that everybody does their homework. I'm the minister of music. I've looked at that. I've come up with my list. I've come to the breakfast meeting. When I sit down with my little subcommittee and start a discussion, I've already thought about what's important. Again, another discussion takes place. What are the key environmental factors that are important, say, to this church and ministry? Okay, then each subcommittee gives a report. There's another open discussion. At Calvary Temple in Tampa, one very important environmental factor was the expressway system and where Calvary is located in relation to the proposed expressway system. Another very important statistic for Calvary is the economic growth in that area, the changes in land values. Dale Brooks and his staff have done an excellent job of assessing what's going on in the Tampa area. And right now they've got a very aggressive program taking place that's paying off because they took the time to determine, well, what's going to happen, what's going on in this area, and right now their smart thinking is paying off for them. Now, what you've done now is you've gotten through your second step. So you gather up the information. Each person has the sheet of paper. You take the summary from the scribes. You take another little folder, stick the papers in there, set it aside. Okay, what do you do next? Well, next, you, after you've looked at environmental analysis, now you want to assess the strengths and weaknesses. What kind of strengths and weaknesses do we have going for us in this church or ministry? I had the opportunity to be an athlete both in high school and college, and this is a principle that I learned from my coaches and from being in athletics. Every coach in America knows how to assess the strengths and weaknesses of not only his team, but his opponents. And as I went through my organizational life, I realized that no coach in America goes into a game and doesn't have a game plan without analyzing the strengths and weaknesses. So I thought, well, this has got to be important. And I've woven those concepts both in my strategic planning book that I use for industrial people. I've also woven the idea into the use of strategic planning for churches and ministries. How do we assess where we stand? You've got to know your strengths and weaknesses, just like the coach, before you develop your game plan. Okay, again now, you'll notice the same procedure just continues to roll right along. If you're on your 3-day retreat, by now you're probably in the afternoon of the first day. Each person has read the section of the book that says, here's how you determine the strengths and weaknesses. There's examples from different churches and ministries woven right there in the book. Most of the people I've worked with the last 5 years have let me use examples straight from their ministry right there in the book to help you. You can see an example of items straight from their specific plan. And I'm thankful that these others have shared this information because the key for me and the key for them is to help you. We want to help you succeed. Now, what you're trying to do now is assess the strengths and weaknesses in terms of your human resources, your people, your physical plant, your building, your automobiles, the very important financial area. You've got to get a good picture of where you stand before you can put your plan together. So again now, you're breaking your groups right back out. They've listed what they think the strengths and weaknesses happen to be. They will discuss it again, taking perhaps up to an hour or most of your lunchtime, discussing what that might happen to be, and then you recap again. Now again, notice I always go back to pull another little file out. It says strengths and weaknesses across the top. Gather up the information. Now you've finished another folder. Now what we're doing is we're slowly but surely developing a foundation to build our plan on. Now the next step is this all-important area of making assumptions. Now, one particular assumption, especially in a non-denominational kind of church, is I think you've got to make an assumption about the health and vitality of your senior pastor. And I've talked this over with Morris Cirillo, Billy Joe Doherty, Dale Brooks, and others. Their church and their ministry is based on the assumption that they remain in good health and are vital. I've raised the issue with these and others of developing a plan on how there's going to be a management team to succeed them. But that's what we talk about as an assumption base. This plan is based on some assumptions. Dr. James Buskirk has been a wonderful lifelong friend. We've spent many hours talking about the planning process, and we both have recognized that in an established Methodist church, there's a mechanism for pastors succeeding one another. So perhaps at First United Methodist, as great a job as Jimmy's doing, their overall strategic direction, where they're going to be in the year 2000, the assumption of Dr. Buskirk's health, although important, is not as dramatically important as, let's say, the health of Bill and Joe Doherty at Victory Christian. But again, everybody gets a chance to get involved with what are your key assumptions. Your discussion leader comes back and says, let's try to recapitalize those and get those in another folder. Now notice what's happened. Now we've reached the stage where we've got 4 full folders of ideas. We've got a folder full of purpose and mission and vision ideas. We've got a folder full of environmental factors. We've got a folder that's got strengths and weaknesses. We've got a folder now that's got ideas about assumptions. Now, what you want to do is take this same group now and create 4 very specific task forces and have them work on each of these. So you'll have a purpose subcommittee. Now, the purpose subcommittee, and this is exactly what we did at Victory Christian, they'll take the 4 people that were in on all the planning up until now, and now they'll go add 3 or 4 out of the congregation. They'll add a housewife, a truck driver, a lawyer, a member of the board. You're going to get a cross-section of people, and it's their job now to take all of those ideas and begin refining a purpose statement. We did the same thing a number of years ago under the guidance of Chuck Fair at Tulsa Christian Fellowship. Week after week after week, the Purpose Committee continues to refine and come back and report to the main committee, here's how we're doing on purpose. Now you take a second committee then, and you create an environmental analysis committee. It takes a lot of work if you decide to do that congregational survey. You've got to develop the survey questions. You can use the survey in the book, but you might want to change some of the questions. You've got to get the survey out to the people. You've got to get it filled out. You've got to bring it back. You've got to get all that put together. So again, you've taken 4 people, or a representative out of the top management group, and you've added 4 or 5 others from the congregation. Now, if you notice what's happening now is you're permeating into the church, you're getting into the ministry and getting other people involved in the plan. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how you get people excited about the plan, and the key is involvement. Those that execute the plan need to be in on the plan. Okay, same thing with strengths and weaknesses. You take another group right out of your top management team, 3 or 4, and you add 4 more. So now you've got another 8-person committee, and they're digging into strengths and weaknesses. Now this is very, very detailed. You want to have your business managers, CPAs, lawyers, controllers type of people on there. You need to do a very detailed financial analysis. The condition of your building. This gets down to looking at the roof. I brought this up in a meeting at First Presbyterian, and it's kind of funny on the side. Every planning meeting I've been in, it seems like every roof in America on every church needs some repair, and very quickly, with great pride, they said at First Presbyterian, our roof's in great shape. And I kind of enjoyed that. But you want you want to look at even the condition of your typewriters. What are the strengths and weaknesses? What's the condition of this church or ministry? Now, this subcommittee is meeting separately from the main committee. Same thing with assumptions. Now, what you're trying to do before you set specific measurable targets is you're trying to say, we want to look at a good, solid foundation before we put together our game plan. Now, these meetings can go on for weeks and weeks. I remember one day, Billy Joe Doherty, we were in a meeting at the City of Faith here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He whispered on, and we had been at this seemingly forever. And he said, Henry, are we getting anywhere at all? And I whispered back, I said, Billy Joe, this is perfect. You don't want to race through a plan. And of course, I'll say, we worked so hard on it, I was beginning to wonder if we would ever have a plan at Victory Christian. But each subcommittee would come back. It seems that there would be disagreement and discussion. And I'd whisper back to Billy Joe, that's good. Let's hash this out before we set the strategic direction for your ministry. Let's be sure that we know what we're doing before we start putting buildings in place. I'd rather do the discussion in the early going than in so many cases, I see churches and ministries just rush out and start doing something without having thought of anything. And then you get started and begin to realize all the mistakes that have been made, and I see so much waste motion. That's why I strongly encourage you to go through this process. When you think about it, you've got all the time in the world. I have noticed, and it's been my perception, that churches and ministries seem to want to rush into things and get going on things faster than most business and organizational and other nonprofit kinds of areas. I think one of the reasons that the Japanese are so dominant today is because they are cautious, methodical, and they're going to think through the plan before they go into action. And when I look back and see all the mistakes and false direction and waste in churches and ministries, my message, pastors, is, hey, let's slow down a little bit and let's think through what we're doing before we go into action. And that's basically what we're trying to do in the foundational steps. Okay, now we're ready to look at those targets. You know, what are we aiming for? We've set our foundation. Our committees have worked together and we've tentatively agreed on purpose. We've looked at environmental factors, what's going on around us. We've analyzed our strengths and weaknesses, our plans based on a few specific major assumptions. Now, what are those long-term specific measurable targets? Remember, we started out with that vision, and the vision is meant to be broad-based. It's a dream, it's a picture. Now, the objective setting stage now is to actually paint exactly what the picture looks like. Now, if you think about an archer and think about your church being an arrow, do you want to just let your church, your organization, and your life be like an arrow just shot off into space, and then wherever it lands you say, well, I guess that's where I was meant to be? If you do that, you never quite know what you're going to hit, and once you hit it, you might not like where you landed. What I'm trying to get across in my book on strategic planning in churches and ministries, and the concept we're trying to get across here right now, is let's focus on a specific target. Archers, as we look out into the forest, let's just don't fling an arrow and trust God to say, well, I hope it lands somewhere where it'll do some good. Let's pick a target, then let's confirm every way we can that, God, is that where you want us to be? Let's pray through what we're aiming toward. And the Holy Spirit's going to give us a confirmation. Yes, go for that target. The churches and ministries that have brought prayer into the planning process have worked diligently to create this direction. I've had a sense in my spirit, hey, that this plan is on target. Now let's look into some of the areas where you can set some of these specific measurable targets. The first one always seems to be in the area of attendance. That's one thing that you can set objectives. You can set objectives for your first and second services, your Sunday school, Your Sunday night services, Wednesday night services. That's one of the things that you can do. Total membership. You can set specific objectives on how big you want your church to be. Now, why is this important? Well, it's critically important because when you set objectives and you're starting to build buildings, you want to be sure that your building and your parking lot are big enough to handle what you're shooting for. Okay, another area you can look into is missions outreach. Set some very specific targets. You know, what do we want to do in the missions area? Don't just take a stab here and a stab there, but have objectives in terms of your whole missions effort. First United Methodist Church at Tulsa has very specific, measurable things. They have annual trips where they go to Mexico and other places. They do a very good job of planning out what they're trying to accomplish in the missions outreach area. In the all-important area of facilities, you've got to make plans to determine what kind of heating system you want, cooling, the budget for running your buildings. You've got to have specific targets, especially in the all-important area for parking. I see in many of the books that I've read on church growth that parking and access to freeways and location are all very important things to think about in terms of church growth. At Mount Zion in South Carolina, Reverend Brad Lewis is being very careful to be sure there's adequate parking as they develop the facilities for their great ministry and great church. The same thing at Calvary Temple. They've got a good plan on how they're going to handle the people. You need to have objectives for your people. One of the things I'd like to compliment back to the Bible in Lincoln, Nebraska on is they've got a well-thought-out 5-year human resource plan. They've got objectives for their people. Of all the ministries and churches that I've worked with, they've got a good, solid people plan. In the surveys that we do on attitudes, we've got a very sophisticated attitude survey that we give to churches and ministries. For the last 7 years, they've consistently scored the highest. Back to the Bible is an exciting place to work. But that's not by accident. They've got well-planned training and activities and other things for their people. In the area of public responsibility, every church must have some public responsibility objectives. You've got to interact positively in the community in which you're operating. Last but not least is this whole area of financial. You've got to have specific financial objectives. And there's a number of suggestions in the book on different areas where you can set these overall specific objectives. You've got to consider all of your programs. You need to have objectives for your children's program, your youth program, your music. Don Ford at First United Methodist Church in Tulsa's got one of the best music programs that I've seen in America. But he's got a well-thought-out plan. Don cares for his people. He listens to his people. It's no accident that First United Methodist has a fine music program. You've got to have objectives for your senior citizens, young adults, people with problems, your lay ministry. The only way you're going to get anything done is when you have these specific targets. Now, here's how you go through the process of setting those targets. About now, if you've been having luncheon or breakfast meetings, it's time to take at least a full day out or another 2 or 3 day retreat and get everybody together and break them up into groups again and have them start to put numbers down. Now, what I suggest is go out at least 5 years or a minimum of 3 years and say, what are we aiming at in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th year? The different groups work on it independently. Now, notice what's happening is you're having interaction and discussion. It's important that people be involved and discuss and talk through what these targets should be. Then you come back and you moderate. You come back and begin to discuss. Your discussion leader works off of a chalkboard or a flip chart and continually puts those long-term targets. What is it we're really trying to aim for? We did this with Victory Christian. We went by to an accommodations at a nearby lake, and we worked all day on what those targets should be. But it's important that you get your long-term targets first. It's a mistake to say, well, here's where we are now. What are we going to do next year? It's more important, and I believe has to be the longer term, where do we want to go, and then you back in and say, well, here's what we should do in the third year, the second year, and the first year. Now, if the plan is over-ambitious, then you come back, and if you just can't accomplish what you want to do in the first year, to make the fifth year come about, then you go back in what I call the accordion effect, and you go back and forth, till years 1 through 5 fit together and make sense. And have some fun on the retreats, too. It's important to go for a walk. Vince Lombardi, the world-famous football coach when he was at the Green Bay Packers, said one of the keys to a successful team is that team's got to love each other. When I look at translating what I learned into sports, into business practice, and in helping you manage and do the best you can in your church and ministry, it's important that your staff love each other. And our day-to-day life is so busy. Sometimes you just can't really get to know that associate pastor, that person right in the office next to you, until you just take a walk out in the woods. Just driving to one retreat, I had the privilege of being in a car with Billy Joe Daugherty for 2 hours, and we just had a chance to talk as we drove down the highway and get to know each other better. Now, once you've got your objectives set, then you take each specific objective. And that's basically what we've done at First Presbyterian. We've taken each one of these key result objectives then and created even another task force to work on the strategies and the operational plans. Now, it's going to take weeks and weeks of work, let's say, on your building committee. You've got to go out and get even more people on your committee. Now, here it's a good idea. You've got architects. You've got landscaping people. There's good talent out there to help you plan in your church. Now, it might take 10 to 15 weeks. These committees continue to meet. They continue to report back either in breakfast or luncheon meetings or in full group meetings. And you're narrowing in the plan for each of those objectives. Now, what I usually do, and I've done in every case, is once you've then got the whole plan together, you have one last retreat and say, okay, here's the full plan from start to finish. You review each step of the process. You've got everybody that's there that's been part of it, and you say, okay, one last time, now do we think we're on target? Now, that's how you put together a strategic plan. Now, notice also that the plan is in writing, and every step of the way, we're typing, we're handing out handouts, we're actually writing down what each subcommittee is doing. There's distribution, a wide range of distribution going out so that everybody knows what every other committee is doing. There's no secrets in the strategic planning process. The plan's in writing. Notice also that quite a large number of people have gotten involved in the plan. Now, this is important because those that execute the plan have to be in on the plan. One of the worst things that can happen to you is if the senior pastor and I took a couple of more people out, we went through and put the plan together and just presented to the church and the elders, well, here's what we're doing. That just doesn't work in America. Then it's our plan. Well, that's Henry's plan. You just brought a consultant in. That's Henry's plan. Then when you say go execute it, it's just day-to-day business as usual. What I see happening, when you get that many people involved, it's thought out and you're behind it and everybody says, amen, that's what we're going for. You've got a plan in action and things happen. I'm seeing that happen all across America. Everybody that's taken the time to go through this process has been able to get an excited group of people 100% behind the plan. Things are taking place, and most of those mistakes and false starts are just fallen by the wayside. Now, I encourage you to go through the book, to read the book carefully. Do like Morris Cerullo did. I've never seen anybody read my material in more depth than Pastor Morris Cerullo. He knows even better than I do what's in those books. You've got to understand how this planning process works. Take the time to get your people involved. Open up and listen to ideas. If you'll follow the procedures that we're talking about, you're going to have a well-documented strategic plan. God's going to be involved in the plan. There's going to be a sense of excitement in your church and ministry. Now, in conclusion, after you've put all this time and effort into a planning process, what's likely to happen? Here's what I think is going to happen. You're going to have time, senior pastor and associate pastors, to do many of the things that you feel God has really called you to do. You're going to have time to minister to the people. Your life is going to be better. You're not going to have to work as many long hours. There are going to be fewer fires to put out. After having done church planning conferences and getting to know pastors over the past few years, I've begun to sense that the greatest struggle that most pastors have is in this whole area of planning and managing. The great joy is out ministering with the people, but the struggle has been, how do I manage all the resources? How do I get the people involved? And how does the day-to-day work take place? If you learn to manage, strategically manage with this process, pastor, associate pastors, the business of the church is going to go on and on and on, and you're going to have an opportunity to do the kind of ministering that you want to do. You're going to be able to manage with a lot less heartache and struggle. You're going to have an organization and a staff that knows what they're doing, and they can operate without you. You're going to be able to go on vacation without panic phone calls. Think about what can be accomplished when everybody knows where you're going, everybody knows what their job is, and the only way they need to get a hold of you is if something's wrong or they're not on target. And I can see this in many pastors. They are enjoying life. There is no sense in being burnt out. I see too many burnt out pastors and associate pastors all over America. This does not have to be this way. If you'll do a good job of planning and managing, getting people behind the plan, then you're not going to have to spend as much time putting out fires, answering criticisms, and constantly struggling with people bickering with each other. Now, remember, it's important that that plan be in writing. It's important that you have a bound plan that everybody can look at. Remember, it's important to get everybody's ideas and involvement in the plan. Another thing that I think is very strong and a very good idea, and I see this done in quite a number of ministries, churches and ministries. For example, after we had gone through the purpose discussions, Dr. James Buskirk in a Sunday morning service talked for about 10 minutes about the vision and dream. He specifically referred to the purpose statement and the fact that a 5-year strategic planning process was taking place. You can use your church bulletins. Everybody needs to know about these targets. Pastor Dale Brooks in Calvary Temple, he gets out and talks about each stage of the planning process in a series of sermons so that people see that overall strategic direction. They know what the targets are. Dale Brooks is asking for ideas. All these things are important as you plan, and notice I'm using the word strategically manage the church. Don't leave God out of the process. If you'll pray about the planning process, if you'll pray for a sense in your spirit that you're on target, God will answer those prayers. You're going to get a sense that, yes, I'm on target. This is what we're supposed to do. I'm so glad that you've taken the time to watch this program. I encourage you to get a copy of the book, Strategic Planning in Churches and Ministries. I encourage you to study what's going on in other churches and ministries. I encourage you to go through the step-by-step process to learn what this planning process is all about. Then, once you've got good information, I hope you'll make the decision to put together a planning task force, that you'll develop a strategic direction for your church, just like the one we've talked about here on this program. I prayerfully am asking you to go through these steps, and I believe you're going to be excited about the turnover. God bless you today.